Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It's Sunday morning, it's just gone 9 o'clock and it feels a little bit cooler than what it was yesterday. I mean, it probably doesn't help that I'm sitting in the shade, but I've definitely had to bring a jumper down with me today. But it's still going to be quite a sunny day, but the forecast during the week, I've seen that it's going to get down to as low as 3. So if it's like that in the town, then it can get down to sort of frost levels here. So I've got a few jobs that I must do before I go home tonight, such as cover up some of the potatoes because they do not like the frost and that could set them back just a little bit. So if you cover them up with a little bit of compost, that should help protect those. And I've also got a few little covers just to put over some of the seedlings in the poly house, just to make sure that they don't get too cold either. I mean, most of the heat loving plants like the chilies, the cucumbers and tomatoes, I've taken them home with me anyway so that I can bring them indoors, because the last thing you want is to leave them down here and then catch the cold, because they will die off or they just won't produce very well later on in the year. Now today I've got a few jobs that I must get done. Now I really must try and do some direct sowing. So we've got some beetroot, we've got spring onions, carrots, and I'm pretty sure there's some other seeds as well that I want to get sown directly into the beds, because I feel like we're quite a few weeks behind on some of those. I mean, I did try carrots, about a month ago and also a couple of weeks ago. They just don't seem to have germinated. So I'm hoping with some of the cooler weather and also a little bit of rain in the forecast, they should do quite well. But the other main job today, and I've remembered them this time, is I'd like to try and get my asparagus crowns in the ground. So we've got 5 of 2 different varieties. I'll get them up in a little while when we go through them. But yes, we must get these in the ground today. Family thought that I had brought a skipping rope. I've left these to soak overnight, but like I say, we'll go over some of that in just a moment. So they're the 2 main jobs, and then if we do get time towards the end, I would like to start building the brassica cage. So I have decided on a couple of beds down near the front of the plot, because it does get quite a bit of shade, and I know that brassicas don't like too much heat because that can make them bolt a little bit early. So we'll take you through some of that, and I must also order some butterfly netting. So no messing around today, guys. I want to get straight stuck into it all, but you know the score. Quick cup of coffee, and then I think we're going to start with the asparagus first of all. Oh, and one thing whilst we're here, I did just want to say thank you to everybody who commented on yesterday's video with all little tips, hints when it comes to growing melons and watermelons. It's really appreciated. So when it comes to the pruning and bits and pieces, I will be taking your advice and I'll be sharing it with everyone else. So I did just want to say thank you. And don't worry, I will be getting back to your comments later on today. So here we have got some asparagus crowns. Now I've gone for 2 varieties. I've got Guelph Equinox, which is a green variety with slight purple tinges. Now Guelph is a place in Canada. I'm not too sure if they're related or not. And then the other one is called Black Limb, and that's also a green variety, because you can get purples and whites as well, which are quite pretty, but I have heard that the green ones do fare a lot better. And these are a perennial plant. So wherever you plant these, they're going to stay in the ground for quite a while. Up to sort of 20 years and more if you really do look after these plants. So I've gone for crowns, and all that means is that these were grown for about a year and then they've been dug up and sent off to me. You can get them from most garden centres or you can order them online, but a cheaper way to do it is to grow them from seed. Now the thing is, these crowns, once I've planted them, they're not going to be ready for me to harvest for a good 2 to 3 years. And if you start them from seed, you're looking at anywhere between 3 to 5 years. And that is just too long for me. I don't think I've got the patience for that. So these crowns for me aren't going to be ready to harvest properly until 2026, 2027. So they are going to grow between then, but you are going to want to let them get established. I'll take you through what you do later on in the year, but all you do is cut them down in the autumn time once they start to fade. Now, asparagus does like a really nice sunny site, but it also likes well-drained soil. So if you've got really heavy clay, it's probably best to try and make a raised bed or just try and improve that soil. So I've added loads of manure into my bed over the last year, also some compost, just anything that's nutrient rich that's going to help build up that matter in that bed I have added. So hopefully these should do well in the new bed that I've made for these. Now, a couple of things that I have read is not to plant these where you've grown potatoes in the past. Now, I'm not too sure whether this is something to do with disease that's carried in the potato that could affect your asparagus. And also try not to pick a bed where you've got loads of perennial weeds such as bindweed or maybe couch grass. anything like that, because these will not like the competition at all. And before you start planting these out, it's a good idea just to give your bed a real good weed over. Now, if you're planting them in beds with other things, try to keep these as far away to the sides as possible, away from anywhere where you're going to be doing some digging, because these roots really do need to get established and be left well alone. Now, the harvest time for these are sort of May, June time, and to be fair, at that time of the year, you don't really have much going on other than the rhubarb and some little bits and pieces, such as pea shoots you might have. There's not much, so it's great to have this going because you can have something to harvest throughout the year. But as I say, I've got to wait until 2026 or maybe 2027 before I even taste my first asparagus. So that's a little bit about the plant. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to head over to the bed, and then we can start digging. You're meant to dig some trenches, but I'm going to show you the way that I'm going to do it, and I'll show you how to plant these out. Now, I have soaked these overnight in just some water, just to plumpen up those roots a little bit after being in the post for I don't know how long. But even if you just soak them for half an hour before planting, that should be absolutely fine, and then we'll give them a real good water later on anyway. So come on, let's go over to the asparagus bed and start planting these guys up. So this down here, this is going to be my asparagus site. Now, when it comes to picking where you're going to be planting your asparagus, do have a real good think before you start doing it, because this is going to be just asparagus for hopefully a couple of decades, sort of 20 years or more, as long as everything goes to plan. Now, it does want to get quite a lot of sunlight, as I said earlier, and also these plants are very hungry. So what I've been doing is I've been adding in lots of compost, I've added horse manure, and that's also going to help build up that organic matter in the soil and help with some of that drainage, because they do not like to be waterlogged. Now, if you do have an asparagus bed already and you're noticing that you're not getting as much as what you used to, or maybe you've taken on a plot and they just don't seem to be cropping very well, you might need to think about a new asparagus bed. But whatever you do, try not to pick the same spot, because you can get a build-up of different pests and disease. And one of the main pests is the asparagus beetle. But once they start to grow later on in the year, I'll take you through a little bit of that. So today we're going to start planting out some of our asparagus crowns. Now, normally you would dig a trench, sort of about 30 centimeters wide, 20 centimeters deep. But today I'm going to try a different way, and I'm going to dig individual holes for each of the asparagus. Now, as you can see, I've already planted a few of them out. You might not be able to see because they sort of blend in with the rest of the compost, just to see how many I'm going to be able to fit in here. So I'm thinking possibly 4 down each side, and then we might be able to pop one just in the middle there. Now, they do say not to grow it with other bits and pieces, but I have got some daffodils in the corner, and I've also got a rose, but fingers crossed that shouldn't cause a problem. And I've also got a foxglove there. I think I'm sadly going to have to move out, because I don't want that to self-seed all over the place, and then I've got a weed problem, because these plants do not like competition. So we'll find a new home for the foxglove. But yeah, let's get a spade and then we can start digging some holes, and I'll show you how to plant up your asparagus crowns. So as you can see, these have got quite long roots on them, and when we plant these out, we don't want the roots to be overlapping with the next asparagus next to it. You really want them to be tip to tip, so that they've got plenty of space. So I'd probably be giving them about 30 to 45 centimeters, maybe even more if you've got some really long roots on them like these ones, just to make sure that they're not overcrowded in here. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to just loosen the soil first of all with a fork, and then we can start digging the hole itself. And because of how big these roots are, I am thinking that it's going to be about a 45 centimeter wide hole all the way around. And then what we'll do is we'll dig each of the holes out, just so that we know each of these plants have got enough space. And then once we've done that, I'll show you how we plant these up in the hole. So already you can tell this is a really nice loamy compost. I just laid a lot of the manure on top, and it seems to me as though the worms have done all of the hard work for me and been taking that down into the soil. So this should be great compost. when it comes to planting out these asparagus, because it does seem quite nice, free and drained, compared to the really hard clay that I have across the plot. So we'll just loosen this up ever so slightly, and then we'll dig a hole, and I'll show you what I mean by when we say we need to make a little ridge in the centre. I've got loads of worms in here, which is always a good sign of a healthy soil. So we'll just dig this about 20 centimetres deep. So as you can see, that is quite a large hole already. And we really want these to be spread out as much as possible. To be fair, that could probably be even wider, but I just do not have the room. Otherwise we're only going to end up with a few plants in here. I'll go a little bit wider over here. So by making a ridge, what I mean is we just want to pile up some of the compost in the middle, and you want to make a little pile, a little mound that we're going to rest the asparagus on, so that the growing tip at the top is a lot higher than the root tips down towards the bottom. So we'll just put some more of this beautiful compost in. I'm building a little type of sandcastle or mud castle in the middle. You don't want it to be as high as the ground level, because we do want to cover the asparagus crowns with a couple of inches of compost towards the end. You can see there, it's like building a sandcastle with a little moat around it. So now we want to get the asparagus, and you want to try and spread these roots as evenly as possible. Now really you would want them to come out a fair amount, but we haven't got that sort of space at the moment. So we're just going to neaten this guy up a little bit and just untangle those roots. They will find their own way eventually once they get established. Just put him on top like that. Now do go careful of these roots, because they can be quite brittle. You don't want to snap it. So once we've done that, we can then think about putting the soil back on top. As I say, I would have liked a little bit of a wider hole to spread these out a bit, but these should be absolutely fine. Now I'm just seeing where this one's going to go. That'll probably be about the same. So before we start putting this soil on top of here, I do just want to dig the next hole, just to make sure when I start forking and start shoveling in this area, I'm not damaging any of the roots on here. So what we'll do is we'll dig the individual holes, we'll plant them all up, and then we'll bury them at the end. Now whilst I'm digging, I'll tell you a little bit about asparagus. So you do get male and female plants, but you will find that the crowns that you get will be an F1 variety. So they should just produce the males, and it's the females that can produce the seed. They still produce a crop, just not as heavy as the male varieties. And even with your F1s, you will find every now and then you'll get a female plant arrive. And that's when you start to get seeds. So you could then start growing some extra ones for later on. Probably I could have got away with doing a trench, but we'll see how we get on with this. I've got the other side to do, so it might be that we trial this out this side and we go with a trench on the other side. go. So now we're going to cover these guys up. I will fit one more down this end, so we'll probably do 4 along here and then 4 on the other side. But we can now start burying this side up. So I'm just going to use all of that beautiful soil. Just going to start pushing it back in. And then what we will do is we'll give this a good mulch, some fresh compost. Now, it'd probably be great to use some of the homemade stuff. However, it is going to be full of weed seeds, and I'd be weeding this non-stop, which they really do not like. So we'll just cover them up just to the tip, and then I will cover it up with some more bagged compost. I'm just going to use a little pot for now, just so I know where that crown is. So I've finished planting the other side. We managed 4 in total, but on this side I am going to try and dig a trench rather than individual holes, just to see if that's any quicker, and I can let you guys know which one I prefer. So I'm just going to loosen this soil, and then we're going to dig a trench 30 centimetres wide and 20 centimetres in depth, and we'll make one long ridge along the centre. We might be able to get 5 on this side, but we'll see how we get on. Now, I should just say that if you haven't got very good drainage in your soil, don't go straight to using grit or something like that to help the drainage. You want to be adding more organic material into the bed, and that will certainly help. So don't go straight to adding some sand or grit into your soil, because that's not going to have much benefit at all. Not gonna lie, I just thought that I'd buried all of the asparagus crowns that I laid out underneath all of that dirt. So I've just been rummaging, but they weren't. I did pop them on the chair, so I wasn't that silly. Hey ho, live and learn. Right, now that we've dug that trench out, let's now lay these out and try and spread them as evenly as possible. Right, there we go. So we've got them all laid out. We can now think about covering these roots back up. I've got one more crown left and I can't fit it inside that bed, so I'm going to give a little experiment and see if we can grow an asparagus in a tub, and if we can, how long is it going to last? I have seen some people grow them in pots, and quite small pots as well, but I just don't think that they would last a very long time. Now, I haven't got any manure left. I might have a little bit somewhere, but I'm just going to use some compost. We've got some left over here with some of the perlite, so that's going to make sure that it's draining really well, but also hold on to some of that moisture. And yeah, we'll plant the last one up in here and see if that does any good. So there we go, we have got the asparagus crowns into the bed. So I've managed to fit 4 in this side, 5 on the other side. Now the trench side was back-breaking, I'm not gonna lie, but I was able to get a few more in there compared to this side. So when you're digging the holes for individual plants, the sort of gap in between them, if you add them all up, that is enough space for an extra plant. So if you don't mind a little bit of digging, I'd definitely go for the trench, but if you're looking for a little bit of ease, I'd dig individual holes. And then we have got one more plant which I have put into a container, and we'll see how that fares. I mean, it probably won't last as long as these in the bed, as long as everything goes well. But next up, we're just going to give these all a real good soak in, probably a watering can each, and then I am going to try and give it a good inch or two mulch with some brought compost. Now I would love to use some of my homemade compost, but it's going to be full of weed seeds and these do not like competition. So yeah, bagged compost it is going to be, but if you've got some horse manure, even better. Just make sure that it is rotted down really well, otherwise it could damage the spears when they start to emerge. Now fingers crossed, we should start to see some growth in the next month or so, but we're not going to pick it. We're going to let them grow nice and tall. So let's go and get some water and give these a good old soaking. Now I did just pop these little pots on, just so I know exactly where they are, just when it comes to watering. So I'll give these a real good soaking, just to help settle the soil around the roots. I did soak them overnight, so they should be quite hydrated, but it definitely won't harm them. There we go, you can see where I've just put a little layer of compost on top, but that is the asparagus bed planted up. Right, now we better sow some seeds in some of the other beds. I've just come and sat in the new seating area that we've been planting up over the last few weeks, and I tell you what, it is quite a sun trap round here. It's absolutely gorgeous. They didn't say it was going to get too warm today, but it's definitely, what, 15, 16, maybe even a bit more. But you're going to have to deal with the squintiness because that sun is rather bright over here. But I did just want to take you through some of the seeds that I'm going to be direct sowing today. Now I'm not going to take you through step by step how to sow each one because they're all sowed pretty much in the same way. So we're just going to make some rows, probably a centimetre or two deep, and just sprinkle the seeds in. With most vegetables, you want to be leaving a space of about 30 centimetres just to give them plenty of room, but also it helps you when it comes to hoeing and getting rid of the weeds that grow in between the rows. So let's go through some of the seeds that I'm going to be direct sowing out today. So first up, we have got a good old standard bolt hardy beetroot. I grow these every single year and they're just your standard globe type shapes, and they're purple because nowadays you can get oranges, yellows, and I think you can even get white beetroot, but I do prefer the purple, and we tend to pickle these every year. It makes the harvest last a lot longer and it's beautiful on salads. But you can also grate it onto a salad raw, and you can cook these, and if I do cook them, I do like to sprinkle in some feta cheese as well, and they're absolutely beautiful. So that is one variety we're going to be sowing today. But we've also got this other variety, and it's called Botello. Now it says that it's one of the sweetest varieties, which is the reason why I've picked it up. It looks very similar to the bolt hardy in that it's purple and a globe shape. So yeah, we'll probably do one row of these, because with these special varieties you don't get quite as many seeds. So we'll get both of these out into some of the beds. Next up, we have got some carrots. Now I've sown carrots a month ago, 2 weeks ago as well, and nothing seems to have germinated. It could be that they're germinating and I'm not down here quick enough to give them a water. That is why I've started to come down here during the week just to check on everything, because it does seem to be quite dry for this time of year. But hopefully this week it does look like we have got a little bit of rain in the forecast, so they should be okay. But we've got three varieties here. We've got Norfolk, and this is an F1 variety. Now I don't live too far from Norfolk, so I'm hoping that these are going to do quite well. And then we have got the Royal Chantenay 3. These are much chunkier carrots. They don't grow quite as long, and I tend to use these more in cooking. So things like casseroles and stews. These are beautiful, but I mean, you could still grate them onto a salad. And then here we have got some Amsterdam Solo 2, and these are a lot thinner. They're nice and long, great for snacking on or putting it in a salad. Next up, we have got some spring onions. So we've got three varieties here. We have got the silver skins. So here in the UK, you can buy these in jars already pickled. So we might give that a go a little bit later on in the year. We tend to normally pickle our shallots, but yeah, this is definitely worth a try. If not, great for on salads. Then we have got the bulbous mix. So these will be a little bit bigger than your normal scallion spring onions, somewhere between a spring onion and a shallot. But look at those colours. We've got the beautiful white, but also those blush reddy pinky colours. And then the good old standard, this is called katana, and you're probably used to seeing these in the shop. So that's a standard spring onion. You can use these in stir fries and also on your salads. So we'll get a few of these in. And then finally, we have got the radishes. You can get all sorts of radishes, but I must admit, they all taste the same. I do like the really bright purpley pink ones. I think they're called Violetta. But for these ones, this is just a standard salad mix. So we'll get a few of these into the ground. We did sow some in the poly house, but they've been eaten by all the slugs. So yeah, we definitely need a few more rows of these. But what I will say is don't sow loads at once because you'll just be inundated with radishes. So just do them little and often, and yeah, that should see you through most of spring and summer. So come on, let's go and sow some of these in the beds. Now I have just noticed in this bed we've got a few carrots starting to show themselves. Thank Christ for that. So we'll give these a bit of a water, and then in the bits where we haven't got any carrots, I will sow some more, and hopefully they won't take too long to catch up. So that is all we've got time for today, folks. That's the asparagus bed done, and we've finally been able to direct sow some seeds into some of the beds. Now I must come down here during the week, one, to do some watering, because as soon as those seeds start to germinate, we must keep on top of the watering, because otherwise they will just dry up and die straight away. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I really must start doing some of the boring jobs, such as weeding. I've got quite a few big beds that are just overgrown with weeds, grass, all sorts. So I want to get down here during the week so that you haven't got to watch me do some of those boring bits and pieces. But that is it for this weekend, guys. I'm going to be back next weekend with the April plot tour, so keep your eyes out for that. And I hope you've had a lovely weekend wherever you are in the world, but I hope you have an even better week ahead of you. So I'll see you next weekend for another adventure down on the plot. So take care, guys. I'll see you later. Bye bye.